Man, it's the worst weather in decades, and another abominable snowstorm has plowed through the south and continues to roll on through the north. 100 million Americans woke up today to snow, ice, and freezing rain in what could be the worst storm of this endless winter. Terry?
Well, the latest round of winter weather has claimed the lives of at least a dozen people across the south and left almost 500,000 homes without power. We have two reports from CBN News, starting with Charlene Israel.
Wicked winter weather is bringing another day of complicated travel. Thursday begins with more than 4,000 flights canceled, leaving about 5 million passengers stranded nationwide.
I was anticipating going home on Thursday, had plans for Friday, but that's now going to be canceled.
The powerful system will dump snow from Philadelphia and Washington up through New York and into New England. Schools up and down the East Coast have been closed.
I'm played out with the snow. This make my job twice as hard.
This winter storm socked the South Wednesday and may be to blame for at least 12 deaths. 3 people were killed when an ambulance crashed on an icy road in West Texas and caught fire. A Dallas firefighter was also killed after being knocked from an interstate ramp and falling 50 feet. In Raleigh, North Carolina, people abandoned their cars on frozen roads, and many ran for cover after one trapped car caught fire.
Don't put your stupid hat on at this point in time. Protect yourself, protect your family, protect your neighbors. Let's protect each other.
Hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses have lost power in the Carolinas and Georgia, where ice and wind gusts snapped power lines and tree limbs. The roof of one North Carolina church collapsed. And in Georgia, this woman's daughter was nearly crushed when a pine tree fell on her home.
Hearing the tree crack and watching it fall from my window and landing on my daughter's room was very traumatic.
Charlene Israel, CBN News.
This is David Brody in very snowy Washington, D.C. Here in this city, it is known for its political dysfunction. Today, it's more like weather dysfunction. This city is pretty much shut down. Sure, there are a few stragglers around, but the federal government is closed. Runways have been shut down. Hundreds of airlines have delayed or canceled flights. Some trains are running, not many though. In essence, this place is somewhat of a ghost town, really a snow town, except we did find someone, get ready for this, delivering the mail. Rain, sleet, or snow, right?
That's right. We have to be here. We're very essential.
Even overnight, they're delivering mail. And actually, there are a few people that are trying to get to work today in Washington. We caught up with them as well.
My office is 2 blocks away that I'm going to go work at, and I think I'll be the only one in our national office for the firm that I work with.
Both the governors of Virginia and Maryland have declared states of emergency. There is more of a foot of snow here in Washington and in the surrounding suburbs. You know, they say not much gets done in Washington, D.C. politically. Well, today, that's for sure. David Brody, CBN News in snowy Washington, D.C.
Well, we can all breathe a sigh of relief. The government is shut down, and you just wish maybe they'd do more of it. Anyhow, Washington may be shut down for now, but the administration's political crisis over Obamacare is far from over. John Jessup has that story again from Washington.
Pat, the White House says about 3 1/3 million people have signed up for Obamacare so far, more than 1 million short of the administration's goal. The White House is targeting younger people to sign up, including those so-called young invincibles who tend to refuse to buy health insurance because they think they won't get sick. But the administration needs them to help pay for Obamacare. And as Ephraim Graham reports, the administration is far from reaching that demographic goal.
The new health care law is experiencing slower than expected enrollment. Young invincibles are adults ages 18 to 24. And they do not appear to be on board with Obamacare. In previous enrollment data, young people made up only about 1/4 of those who had signed up for the healthcare exchanges. The White House has downplayed the lag, saying they're expecting invincibles to enroll toward the end of the 6-month sign-up period. But as the March deadline approaches, there's a new sense of urgency.
Tonight, I ask every American who knows someone without health insurance to help them get covered by March 31st.
According to a Kaiser Family Foundation study, about 40% of new enrollees need to be young and healthy to balance out the high cost of covering those who are older and sicker. But many young people are opting out of the high cost of coverage under the president's new health care law.
It's very expensive for them. On average, we're seeing premiums will increase 169% across the board. Young people realize that Obamacare is taking the young and healthy to pay for the sick and older Americans. And it's just not something that's fair. We're leveraging our future.
As the White House waits for more young people to enroll, grassroots efforts pushing people to sign up for the president's health care plan are popping up.
We're trying to make sure it feels urgent all the time. And at least in our experience, enrollment's picked up a lot since January 1st.
Workers and volunteers are now targeting the so-called young invincibles by spreading out across the country, drawing on grassroots campaigning techniques the Obama administration learned in the past 2 elections.
Anybody have any questions about health insurance?
But so far, they're still short about a third of young and healthy enrollees they need. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Pat, it's no wonder the administration sees them as a gold mine. One estimate says there are 19 million young invincibles.
Well, here's the dirty little secret, ladies and gentlemen. You have to realize if a business has employees, they have to cover them and cover them the way Obama thinks they should. Now, this is going to cost each employee maybe $12,000 a year. So they say, okay, under this law, if you don't cover your employees, you pay a fine. Well, what's the fine? A couple $1,000s. So you save $10,000 if you don't cover your employees. So that pushes all these employees into one of these plans. And the plans are deliberately set up to fail because without an adequate number of young, healthy people, the majority of the enrollees are going to be sicker, older people. And actuarially, it's not going to work, which means that's going to be dumped on the federal government. And then somebody's going to stand up and say, listen, this is the failure of private insurance. And if the private sector were only doing its part, everything would be fine. And what we need is a single payer plan. Cut out all the insurance companies, have one payer, and that payer will be the federal government. That's the game, to force everybody into the corral owned by Obama and his cronies. Now, just make no mistake about it. That's where they're going. That's what they really, behind the scenes, are telling everybody. But this thing is horrible. And in truth, they had 30 million uninsured when it's going in. When it's all finished, they're going to have 30 million uninsured. And as I believe Charles Krauthammer said the other day, they have disrupted the entire healthcare system of America for nothing. The only reason is to get socialist control over 1/6 of the economy. That's the game. That's the game. And folks, you're just a pawn in their hands. So you ought to stand up and say something about it. It's terrible what they are doing to you and to the American economy. John?
Pat, President Obama has repeatedly made changes by himself to the health care law when it's run into problems, and the public doesn't like it. In a new Fox News poll, 60% say they disapprove of the president going around Congress, while 37% approve. The president has often said he will take action when necessary with or without Congress. Turning overseas, radical Muslims have been carrying out a much more widespread campaign of violence against the government of Egypt ever since former President Mohamed Morsi was ousted. Suspected terrorists blew up a key gas pipeline in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula earlier this week. George Thomas reports on what many fear is a simmering insurgency.
Since July 3rd, when Egypt's powerful military removed Islamist President Morsi from power, nearly 17,000 Muslim Brotherhood members and other political activists have been imprisoned. The military here insists they are in a war for survival against terrorists.
The government has to take all necessary precautions in order to finish any activities of the Muslim Brotherhood.
But some Egyptians are beginning to accuse the military of oppressive tactics and blame them for fueling a jihadist insurgency in retaliation for Morsi's ouster.
It is clear that the military has the upper hand, and we are turning into a dictatorship against secular forces.
While a sense of calm has certainly returned to parts of Cairo, the potential for renewed violence still looms very large. And now there is a growing insurgency in the Sinai Peninsula, with frequent attacks against security personnel. More than 200 security forces have been killed since last year, many of them by an al-Qaeda-inspired group known as Ansar Bet al-Maqdis. Arabic for the Champions of Jerusalem. On Tuesday, the group was suspected of blowing up a pipeline in the Sinai Peninsula that carries natural gas to Jordan. They've also staged a series of bombings and suicide attacks on security forces in recent months. Egypt, which has branded the Brotherhood a terrorist group, has accused its former leader of creating a military wing to attack security personnel.
As long as elements of the Muslim Brotherhood continue to use violence, it opens the door for the military to also use violence against them, giving the state lots of authority to crack down and potentially turn us into a police state.
To control the Islamist rise, the government this week ordered all mosques to deliver the same message, which must be approved by authorities ahead of time. Muslim preachers who disobey the order will be replaced. George Thomas, CBN News, Cairo, Egypt.
Here at home, the FBI doesn't suspect terrorism in a sniper attack on a California power grid station last April. The FBI is still investigating the military-style raid, which knocked out 17 transformers at a Pacific Gas and Electric's power substation, which feeds power to Silicon Valley. There are still no suspects or motive, but not everyone agrees with the FBI's conclusion ruling out terrorism. According to Foreign Policy magazine, one former PG&E executive believes this was a dress rehearsal for future attacks. Lawmakers are urging utility regulators to beef up security at power plants and substations around the nation, saying the sophisticated attack is a wake-up call about the threats to crucial infrastructure. Pat, that's a pretty somber warning there.
Well, he's telling the truth. We're going to do a detailed analysis. I've asked our news department to really get on the scene and find out. But if all you've got is a chain link fence, and behind the chain link fence are transformers, any high-powered rifle is able of punching holes in those transformers, and they begin to leak vital fluid, and then they short, and they have to be taken off the air, or else they blow the place up. And they're very, very vulnerable. And we're looking at the power grid of the United States of America. We must have electric power. If everything works on electricity. Think what happens when your electricity goes out. You just blow a fuse, and all of a sudden you got no lights. Your toaster doesn't work. Your microwave doesn't work. Your television doesn't work. Whatever it is you're used to using, you can't use. And think about that all the way through the economy. And these power stations are vital. And if they go down and the street lights go out, there's chaos, pandemonium. I mean, it's a major recipe for domestic violence and revolution. And we don't need that. But we're going to be talking about the vulnerability of the power grid. And well, anyhow, that's the way what we're doing and looking at. And this situation in California, they say, was clearly a sophisticated attack. It wasn't just a bunch of kids shooting off guns and, in the middle of the night. This was sophisticated. They knew exactly where the key access points were. They knew where the points were where they could shut off necessary alarms. They had it all under control. And what that executive said, I concur. It looked like a dress rehearsal for a big one. John?
Pat, speaking of power, scientists say they've taken a key step toward harnessing nuclear fusion as a new way to generate power, although they're still a long way from a workable fusion power system. The breakthrough involved using lasers that started the nuclear reaction. Nuclear fusion is what powers the sun. It would have several advantages over today's power sources, including producing a cleaner and cheaper source of energy. Pat, it sounds like that holds a lot of promise.
Well, I've been looking for that for the longest kind of time. Nuclear fusion is the answer. And some of the scientists way, way back in that project that was in Chicago said the reason we got into this is because one day there might be nuclear fusion. It would be the power source for the world. It would be cheap, plentiful. Everybody would have electrical power. It wouldn't be something that would be rationed. It wouldn't depend on fossil fuel. It wouldn't pollute the environment. It's like a dream come true. But they're trying to do it, and let's hope they're successful.
Attending church cuts down on crime. That's according to researchers at Manchester University. They found people who attend church on a regular basis are less likely to commit crimes. The most significant drops were seen in shoplifting, the use of illegal drugs, and music piracy. Researchers believe that besides teaching people about morality, being involved in church also keeps them from ending up in the wrong crowd. The Boy Scouts of America says its membership fell by 6% last year. The Scouts leadership voted last May to let openly gay young people join. That change made many volunteers from churches angry. They consider homosexuality a sin and a violation of the values of Scouting. But the Southern Baptist Convention disagreed with the move and left it up to individual churches to decide if they want to stay with the Scouts. Some who left went to a group called Trail Life USA, an organization set up by conservatives and Christian groups. And you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.